The one thing that I do wish that more people like would accept. We have this idea that things in the past were holier or purer or more ethical. And it's the exact opposite. Things are more pure, ethical, outright now than they've ever been. Okay, so you are my in-house conspiracy theorist.
That's me, brother. What's up?
Okay, so everybody knows, Alec runs all of the influencers and affiliates for Modern Warrior. That's his whole wheelhouse. He is also the most that I know, like you get hot, you get excited about conspiracies and how deep they go. And so I'm giving you time right now. So I'm gonna ask you about conspiracies that you really like and believe in, and then I just wanna talk about them.
All right. I mean,
Okay, I wanna know, what is the one that you think about the most?
I think right now the one that I think about the most. Well, I had one plan, but now we're gonna go down this one.
Okay.
Is understanding like how they stole the election in 2020.
Okay, so the stolen election in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, especially after what we saw in this election, right? I mean, 2024, the votes went down by over 10 million.
Okay.
Like Joe Biden somehow got 83 million in 2020. And what they were only at like 69 million this year was, I think, like the most, or 72 million. So,
I have no idea what the numbers are, but I do know what you mean. There was a ton more people in general voting in 2020 over all the years before,
Right.
And this, so that one like skyrocketed.
yeah, and just to be clear too, because like, this is what was funny, is on what was it, November 7th, the day after the election, both sides of the aisle were trending, was like the election was stolen, right? So the right side was saying like, obviously the election got stolen in 2020, where are these 10 million plus votes? And then the left on this election was like, obviously it got stolen, like where did all these votes go? That's why the ballot boxes were burning and all of this. So I just think it was like, and dude, 2 years ago we were talking about I thought it was definitely stolen. So I mean, what are you?
Okay, so here, let me ask one more question.
Yeah.
Who stole it? Like, who
In
is
2020, yeah.
Who's the group who stole it?
Well, it would be the Democratic National Party, right?
Okay, I'm asking you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that sometimes people have different answers about what they think it is or who did it.
Yeah, no, I think it would have been the DNC.
Okay. So, I think that a lot of people think the same thing, that like there were so many more votes, there had to have been something shady about it.
Something fishy was happening.
And then, but here, before we get into that, there's two parts that I want to think about is, first, I don't think that this election, that the left was saying that the election was stolen in 2024 this year. What I mostly hear is like, they can't believe that people got duped by Trump into believing that he's the good guy. That's kind of like the rhetoric that I hear over and over, which I don't agree with, but that's what I hear more of. I don't think that I think they think that Trump actually got voted in, but like, they just can't believe that Americans are so dumb and so evil.
Right, fair point. And this was the thing, because I was sitting in the office when, on whatever it was, the 6th or the 7th or whatever, and it was funny because I saw both people being like, both sides of the aisle were like, oh no, it definitely got stolen in 2020, and then they were like, because like remember the election day, there was like that ballot box, the ballot box had that fire in it, or someone set, like there was a bomb that went off in one of the ballot boxes in one of the states.
Okay.
And they were saying like that was why Kamala lost. Because like someone from the Republican Party was putting bombs in the ballot boxes. And that's where all these 10 million votes went.
Got it. So here would be my 2 cents, right? Is like, there are obviously things that like political parties do that are immoral, illegal to try to win, right? But when I think about the grand scope of it, it seems to me like actually voter fraud on a system-wide level is pretty hard. Like it just is a difficult task.
Right.
Now, does voter fraud happen? Absolutely. But I think that it's more on like an individual basis. It's like one guy who he also votes. He votes for him and for his dead mom. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who can still get a thing in.
Right, and that you would say is voter fraud.
Well, clearly, it's voter fraud.
Okay. So we're in agreement there.
But that's not systemized voter fraud. There's always going to be people gaming the system.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? But that's not like from an organization conspiring and like setting a system so that way they get these things.
Right.
Like there's voter fraud for Trump. But I wouldn't say it's Trump's fault. Right. It's like there's just some guy who, again, made up a fake alias and got a card and fucking voted twice for him or something. But it doesn't have anything to do with him. Just like there's KKK members who vote for Trump. Right. I don't think that makes Trump a bad guy.
Right.
Like you can't help that they do that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay. So your overall thought, though, is that they got together and got 10 million extra votes. By how?
Well, the way that people have like basically stated it was like the same thing you just said, where people were getting extra votes because of their dead grandma or mass amounts of votes of people that have been dead for a long time, and then the ballot box like harvesting basically, where people were just dumping hundreds of thousands of, not maybe them, but like 1,000 extra votes when it's like, aren't you just supposed to drop your own ballot off? And where are all these extra ballots coming from? People coming to these ballot boxes and they're just shoveling.
So what I think about, though, is like, whenever we think about things that are really big, it's easy to squeeze in bullshit.
Right.
Right? Like just in general. As where I do know, because we live out here in Arizona, after the election, they hired 3 separate, so the Republican Party hired these groups to come in and look for voter fraud.
Right.
And they didn't find any.
Right.
And so, it's like, okay, it wasn't bought for by the Democrats, it was bought for by the Republicans. They still didn't find it. They used multiple of them. And so it's like when you get down on a granular level, real detailed, it's like, I can't say it didn't happen anywhere, but it didn't happen in mass from the big political party out here.
Yeah.
And I think that is the difference, is like, I hear a lot of people say that like here's this conspiracy and there's this group of people that are like brainwashing you and taking over this and doing this thing, right? And it's like, yeah, but then as soon as you squeeze into the details of it, it kind of just like goes away, because conspiracy theorists in general, to me, they live in big open playing fields. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and this is what you've taught me over the years of our, friendship. Is like, and I remember it was you, Carter, and I, and we were sitting up at a Scottsdale store. I don't even remember what conspiracy theory I was talking about, but you just said, you're like, dude, you have a monkey brain. You have a monkey brain.
We all have monkey brains.
No, we all have monkey brains, yes. But when you get this big, grand conspiracy, right? And you don't know the answer to something, well, your monkey brain just fills in something that makes sense to you.
Yes.
And then you connect to the next dot. That might be factually true, but the conspiracies come in from that little dot of you filling it in on how it's connected.
Yeah.
But before 2020, have you ever used a Sharpie on like your ballot?
Do you know, you want to hear something really crazy?
All right.
I have never once voted. This goes back to like this is my bigger conspiracy theory. I don't actually.
So you're a conspiracy theorist too.
But here's what my conspiracy theories are, right?
Okay.
I think that you can sell people an idea of a system. So it's like, think of how many billions of dollars are made making rivalries between 2 cities and sports teams.
Yeah.
Like, there's really no rivalry. Like I'm from St. Louis,
Yep.
and like St. Louis Blues and the Chicago Blackhawks have a rivalry lasting for forever, right?
But where did that stem from?
Well, like it had something. It actually had to do with one of our old players. Their dad played for Chicago.
Oh, so
and
it's kind of like the Chicago Red Sox and the Yankees.
Yes.
So yeah,
right.
Same kind of
like
concept.
right. But by creating this like fight, you get people to fight on each side, and then they buy more tickets and buy jerseys and go to the thing, right?
Yeah.
And so there is this. The big conspiracy theory to me is that like perpetuating the fight is what gets people to buy into it. Like saying that the Democrats are fighting the Republicans and the Republicans are fighting the Democrats is like the big scandalous lie to me. To me,
Right.
it's the same party. It's the same thing. Like every year we spend more money on the government, inflation goes up way too far, and we get into more debt. And that literally, it doesn't matter if we vote in a Democrat, doesn't matter if we vote in a Republican.
Yeah.
That happens every single year. So if the outcome is always the same.
So it sounds like you're a believer in the deep state, though.
Well, but see, here's the difference. This is why I don't consider mine a conspiracy. A conspiracy means that somebody conspired to make it that way,
Right.
rather than that is actually just how game theory plays out. Game theory sets effectively like one person against another in this battle of to try to win using different tactics. And that's just kind of like what ends up happening. Again, like I don't think that there was somebody who sat back and was like, let's make the Blues fight the Chicago Blackhawks. But what happened is they saw that rivalry, and then the people that saw it going were like, oh, let's play into that and
we can make more money.
We can make more money off of it. And it's like, but nobody was sitting back thinking about, making that.
Right. They didn't say like, oh, well, we're going to put him over on this team because of St. Louis.
Yeah. Like it just didn't work that way.
Fair point.
And so, again, it's like you have, like in other countries, in Germany, there's like 6 or 7 different political parties.
Yeah.
And we don't have to play the game that we play the game here. And I'm not really willing to like buy in and play their game until they start doing it in a way that there are different outcomes. Like if you were told that like, hey, if you eat vegan, you're gonna have these kind of better health markers, and if you eat a carnivore diet, you'll have these kind of health outcomes. But then you did both and it gave you the same outcome. Why are you picking? Like, don't pick.
Yeah.
Like, you have to show me a different result before I'll start playing the game.
Yeah.
Right? And that I believe that. Otherwise, it's just a waste of my time. Like, what am I doing?
Right. Like, why are you even spending the energy? Like,
Why am I doing this? Like, it is why I like with a lot of political stuff.
Yeah.
I don't even like watch or listen into it because if the outcome doesn't change, right? It like working out. Like, why go do yoga versus weightlifting if at the end of the day nothing changed?
Fair point. Well, which we know there's.
But they do. Those do.
Yeah.
So I do make a choice.
Right.
And I pick one because I want this outcome.
Yes.
So anyway, all right. Then let's go to the actual voting one that you're talking about. I will agree with you. I will concede that it is crazy how many more people voted in 2020.
Yeah, because there wasn't 12 million deaths in the United States of voting age people compared to.
But then where my thought process goes, like, what would be the simplest answer? Let me look at how much coverage did the election get in 2012, 2016, and that is predictive of then in 2020. Like, did more people vote because they just were so pissed off about Trump getting voted in, so it got a bunch of people to vote? And this is just like literally what I think. That seems like a simpler answer. So a bunch more people went and voted, and then they went and got out, they got in the streets, they fucking got him out of the presidency, and then 4 years later, they're like, oh, fuck, that didn't really pan out the way. Like, people, when they make a decision and it wasn't right, they don't acquiesce and say, oh, I voted for the wrong guy, sorry, I'm a dickhead. They just go, oh, and they just quit talking about it. So then it makes sense to me for a ton of people to go vote. And then, like, clearly everyone can look and see, like, Biden being a president for the last 4 years did not pan out the way they thought that it was going to.
Fair point.
And so then they're just like, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to go back to not voting. Like, because, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So then, 2024, not as many people voted again because, well.
But how did all the numbers, they kind of stayed the same, though?
What
You
do
know
you
what I'm saying? Like, so for, what was it, 2008, 2012,
Oh.
2016.
I see what you're
then we
saying.
get this huge jump in 2020, and then it's back to normal 2024.
Well, like I'm saying, what my argument would be is I don't know.
Right.
But Occam's razor, the simplest answer would be more people got pissed off about Trump
Yeah.
and decided to vote. And then they realized, oh, my vote didn't help me out. So then they went back to
Actually made it
not.
worse.
You made
Yeah.
it worse.
Yeah.
So then they just went back to not voting in 2024, back to where normal levels would be. So let's say you take 40 years and you had one where, I know there's another one that was a very high surge of votes. I think it was Kennedy was the one where there was another high surge of votes. And which, like, yeah, over a 50-year time period, there's probably going to be one or two where.
Those outliers. That
Yeah. But, then also, this is one because there is a number, like so many extra people voted.
Yeah.
I would hear the argument that some kind of systematic fraud was put into it. But I just haven't heard a good, well then tell me how they
Right.
did it. So you gotta give me something.
Well, what was most crazy to me, too, especially as all the votes came in, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, there was not any blue state.
What do you mean?
Every state was red. There was only blue cities. So every 2020 there was like,
Well, clearly there were blue states. Like states went blue. Illinois went blue.
but it was not because of the state. The state, like,
Well, yeah, obviously, but that's how it works.
it's never worked. Dude, that map has never looked like that ever before. If you were to show the map of like all the how the votes came out, there would be like some counties that were blue over here in Michigan.
Okay.
There was only blue cities. Even California, there was more capita that was red than there were blue. It was like San Francisco and LA.
Yeah, but I think California has been that way for a long time. I think it still is this year to where I think, I don't know the total population or whatever it was, but there are so many conservatives in California. They're just way over swathed by how many live in the densely populated areas.
LA, San Fran.
Yeah, Bay Area, yeah. So, because you can even say the same thing there is, like, I grew up in Missouri, and Illinois is the fucking same as Missouri. Like, they are the same fucking hillbillies in the middle of fucking nowhere. Until you get into Chicago, then it's like you have this, like, it's a different person.
Got it.
It really is a completely different person that lives in Chicago than that grew up in.
It's like going to Scottsdale versus Flagstaff type thing.
I think it's even more than that.
Okay.
Like your average person in Scottsdale still to me is like a normal human being.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But like more like think about, people in California out in the middle of like farmland in California.
Oh, bro,
it
I
looks
used to
like
live out in Barstow. I get it. Yeah.
It's fucking, it is middle of America, fuck you, American flag shit.
That is, yes.
And then you get into downtown LA and it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is a different country.
Yes.
Like you guys speak a different language. There is fucking like, you know what I always think about? I think about this all the time. I lived in Germany for a while and you can tell different places by the way that they have sidewalks. This is like like in Germany what they use these bricks that like miss holes in between them so grass can grow up in it, but it's like supposed to be there.
Yeah.
If you're out in like Scottsdale or like middle of America, fucking, even California, that looks different than if you are in LA and like look at the sidewalks. Like it looks like just like a different country. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It set up the framework of how it looks.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's hard to explain, but it's like the things look different. But you know that because New York, Chicago, LA, they literally don't feel the same.
Right.
As like hanging out around here.
Yeah, just like in a suburban land. Yeah. No, I still think, dude, something fishy happened. And I think you and I can somewhat agree on this, but like the Hunter Biden laptop thing. Okay. Facebook was told by the FBI, and Mark said, the FBI was talking to me and said, hey, don't let this go through. Okay, you can let this go through.
Totally.
That's where I like that's where I don't understand is like, okay, so like 12 million people or 10 million people, like, because the orange man is bad, like they voted for this other guy, but this other guy is as bad or even worse for the country.
Yeah.
And they chose him because orange man is bad.
Well, you know, to be fair, and I try to be really good about this.
Yeah.
The Hunter Biden laptop thing is one of those things that I was wrong about. Like, I was like, guys, it's not that bad. Like, it's like, yes, did some dipshit kid, you know, do stuff? Absolutely. But that's no different than fucking, you know, some rich guy's kids being dipshits.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. And then as it came out later, it was like, nope, that was pretty bad. That was pretty bad.
That was the son of the vice president for
totally.
8 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was but what I think is that during that time, we didn't really know. Like, I'll be honest, I did not believe that was like conspiratorial. I also didn't think, I thought that the government was using COVID and like, you know, like censoring and not being good about information, right? But what they were doing was like straight up outright like lying and blocking people and doing really fucked up shit.
Right, which would then, you know, go like, and that's where it goes into the conspiracy, right? Is like, how is the government then connected to not only mainstream media, but now social media, and their hands are in everything. So like, to your point where it's like, well, did someone sit back and conspire?
Yeah, on that I think so.
So, but if it's happening somewhere, where else is it happening?
Yes, but I think you can see the difference between leaking information and voter fraud. By this, holding things back is easier than taking an action. Like, and just by all, like, getting you to shut up is easier than making you go do something.
Yes. Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they really it takes more energy.
Right.
Right? It takes more skill and labor. And so I still am a little wishy-washy about this like voter fraud thing. But coming back, one thing that I do wish that more people like would accept. We have this idea that things in the past were holier or purer or more ethical. And it's the exact opposite. Things are more pure, ethical, outright now than they've ever been.
Okay.
Right? Like, I am a big Benjamin Franklin fanboy. Like, if you really read about him, he was like a fucking superhero. But he also made up 12 different names, bought newspapers, and would argue he was both characters. And he would make different pseudonyms and write one story and then write another story and have them argue against each other so people would get riled up to get them on his side about things. That's how deep of lying pieces of shit people in office have always been. Like, throughout the 1800s, 1900s, literally politicians would just buy a whole newspaper, because there were thousands of them.
Right. That was the only news source.
Yeah, and tell them exactly what had to be said and run smear campaigns as fact against other people.
Right.
Like, they were more immoral and unethical back then than we are now, but only because now there's more transparency. You didn't know who owned the newspaper in 1823.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Now, we know who owns these media corporations, and they can be influenced by politicians, but they literally can't outright make, if they wrote, now it has happened, when they write factually incorrect things, well, you can just data source that because we have the internet.
Yeah, but how many people are actually data sourcing?
Well, I look now at the number one podcast in the world, Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I mean, they literally, he talks about it all fucking day. He's like, this is bullshit, this is bullshit, this is bullshit. So no, the information is out there and it's on the number one most watched podcast in the world.
Yeah.
So it's like, it is different. And this is, I know I'm going down a weird rabbit hole here, but we do the same thing that we think Indians were these peacekeeping, holy, amazing people. They raped each other. They murdered each other in huge numbers. They were not about the environment. They had a practice of taking buffalo, running after them, and making them jump off of a cliff in hundreds so they didn't have to like kill them. They could just take the dead carcasses.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we just do this thing where things in the past we think that they were good guys.
Right.
And they weren't. Like if you could get away with more lies,
you
were gonna fucking do it,
Yeah.
right? Today it's just harder to get away with the lies. So we catch them in more bullshit.
Yeah.
When we catch them in more bullshit, it makes it look like they're worse. But they're not actually worse. We just can find out.
Fair point.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, anyway, okay. One last little conspiracy thing that you feel and think.
Oh, one last one? Oof. The education system.
Okay.
Started by John D. Rockefeller
Okay.
and his foundation, put there in place to keep people uneducated, uninformed, so that they can be good factory workers. Which now today would just translate into go to school, go to college, get a degree, get a job, which you and I both know
Yeah.
is obviously not working.
Yeah.
Student loan debt is at its all-time highest, which is blood debt. You can't get out of that. You can go bankrupt. You're still stuck with that debt. And more of those educated people are getting worse and worse jobs
Yeah.
compared to, entrepreneurs or people that are not taking that route, like myself, who
Entrepreneurs.
entrepreneurs that are, really just trying to make a difference in companies rather than just get a job and
Totally.
stuff like that. So the conspiracy being that there's a group that has kept the education system and kept humans down through the education system rather than them being contributing members to society.
Again, I think that Rockefeller probably had a good intention by doing it.
Yeah, make
Right.
more good factory workers.
No, I think he had a good intention because here's a part that I think that when people like you say that, is they don't realize how dumb, illiterate, and terrible people were before that. So let me give this analogy. It's like, did it do that, make good factory workers? Yes. But that is a lot better than not being able to read and not being able to do anything. So was it a step in the right direction? Absolutely. Like to be able to go and do that, to be able to get educated, to be able to do things.
Right, back then in the 1900s.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Now, as things change over time, do we need to... times change, and so the way that we use things need to change.
Right.
But also, more importantly, any system that you create that is a top-down system, not a bottom-up structure, will inherently have like evils in it.
Fair.
Like, the school
So
system.
because like the Department of Education is run by the federal government and it's stayed the same for 100 years, you're saying that there's going to be these like evil things or like not things that aren't
It's not that they're evil, it's that when you, like, let's say you run a federally funded organization to help homeless people.
Yeah.
Well, if you cured homelessness, you'd be out of a job.
Yeah.
So
We've had that conversation.
Right? So
too,
it's like the work that you end up doing actually ends up making there be more homeless people because it propagates the work more. Same thing with like the education system. The education system like individuals in it aren't evil, but it's the system will make need of more system. So systems always grow. And so it's like an education system will say like, well, to make this better, we need these extra kind of teachers and we need more schooling and we need more funding and we need more and whatever.
so that they keep their jobs internally.
Yeah.
Rather
but
than-
also, it's not just that they keep the jobs. Like they view the world from that. They see what they do. They are a hammer, so everything is a nail, right?
Yep.
Which like it doesn't make them evil. It's just like that's what they do,
Right.
right? And so, but then it takes somebody else coming in and to go like, no, you can look at this in a completely different perspective. And I think we're kind of at that cusp with like schooling, where like it's going to change.
Yeah.
Right? It'll be different.
Yeah.
And I think what it'll be is AI taught children on an individual level. So, because right now what we do is we put kids into schoolrooms based on age, but just like you can see with puberty, kids grow at different rates.
Yeah.
And so, like, I remember, and honestly, this is not like me gloating, but it's like, I remember being in like 3rd grade, and I was like, oh, you kids in here are dumb as fuck. Because but I was also like when I was younger, I was like real tall. I like kind of like grown into my body really quickly.
Yeah.
And so then I did get put in an accelerated, called it galactic, like special,
Yeah.
You're fucking doing high algebra or whatever in like 3rd grade.
Yeah.
But what'll happen is like you'll just get an AI that will like test you at where you're at and work on your
know where to
deficiencies
go.
and
Yeah.
work on what you can do better. And that is one thing that AI will be fucking awesome at.
Yeah.
Because it'll be able to work with like every student having their own teacher
Yeah.
that knows them and how to work with them.
And then also knows everything.
And
'Cause
also
it's AI, yeah, it knows everything.
The problem there is like who's informing the AIs.
Yeah. Whole other conspiracy that we can go down on. But
Okay,
yeah.
this was fun. I'm glad we got to do this.
Boom.
My dog. Thank you, brother. All right, the Viking podcast. This is Aggressively Balanced. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you really liked that one. Comment, like, subscribe. See you later.